Before exploring human design, astrology, gene keys, or developmental psychology, there's a single core idea that ties everything together. It's a distinction that completely changed how I understand people, purpose, and personal growth. When I fully understood it, I stopped listening so much to external advice and started following my own inner blueprint. I call it signal and architecture. To explain it best, I'm going to use a metaphor. Imagine listening to a beautiful piece of music on a radio. Where is the music coming from? Is it inside the speaker? No, the speaker does not create music. It simply expresses music. The quality of what you hear depends on two things: the signal or source of the broadcast and the speaker, the receiver of the broadcast. If the signal is clear, but the speaker is damaged, the music will be quite distorted. However, if the speaker is perfect, but there is no signal at all, nothing happens. So ultimately, both are required. Now, nature already understands this. A seed carries information, but that information cannot express itself without architecture. In terms of trees, we think of roots, branches, leaves, and fruit. And different trees express information from their seed through completely different architectures. An oak, a cedar, a bonsai, none are mistakes. Each is an elegant solution to a different problem, and people operate in the same accord. However, most personal development makes one critical mistake. It tries to exemplify certain qualities that are deemed good or ideal and drives us to conform to an existing standard. Be more confident, be more disciplined, be more extroverted, be more spiritual, be more productive. The assumption is that there is one ideal architecture for everyone to follow. And throughout the time I've been coaching and doing readings, I don't believe any of that's true in the slightest. I believe that there's a diverse range of equally beautiful architectures. In fact, that there's a different one for each individual. And each is designed to express life differently. And that's why a lot of good intentioned advice often fails. The advice isn't wrong. It's simply designed for someone else's architecture. So if you're born with a specific architecture, then living your life is intended to reveal that. Systems such as human design, gene keys, and astrology are there to support an accelerated revelation of our unique architecture. So now that architecture is understood, what the heck is signal? Signal is difficult to define because it cannot be directly observed. You can only see its effects or feel its effects. You might call it life, God, consciousness, soul, awareness, universal life force, divine intelligence, creativity, source. Different traditions use different words, but they all point to the same thing. We don't actually need to agree on what signal is. We simply need to recognize that something appears to be expressing itself through every living thing. And architecture is ultimately designed to house or to hold that signal. When architecture is outdated or distorted, it naturally creates an imbalance. And in humans, that leads to suffering. It leads to us feeling something very important, but then being not able to express that externally in the world. So therefore, we should aim to understand our unique architecture and also how to adapt it to hold the incoming signal. And that's really where the Triadic Codex began for me, because different traditions have been studying architecture from different perspectives. Astrology looks at archetypal patterns. Human design explores the energetic mechanics. Gene keys illuminates the spectrum through which those mechanics are expressed. And developmental psychology explores how maturely that architecture is actually embodied. So none of these systems are meant to compete with each other. They're simply observing different layers of the same architectural blueprint. This idea echoes one of the central questions from Harmonizing Signal and Architecture, which is my new book. The link is in the description below. What if these systems are all pointing towards the same underlying architecture rather than competing explanations? This is the most important sentence related to signal and architecture, because I don't want you to ask, who am I? I want you to begin asking, what is my architecture that life is expressing itself through? That single shift changes almost everything, because now you stop trying to be someone else and begin understanding the design or the blueprint that you've actually been given. We've got the signal, which is pure potential emanating, picked up by the receiver of the architecture. And if the architecture is working properly, then it's the pattern that gives it form. So architecture that's adapted to house signal will translate that signal into the feeling of coherence within us. And that's where signal and form are aligning. And that creates a coherent expression. So the unique unfolding for us from that alignment, which then creates the experience of life becoming conscious of itself. So our role is simply to receive the signal in our unique way and allowing us to express it in the way that feels coherent, and then watching life unfold. And that's the mystery. We don't need to predict the future, we just need to trust the process. If you follow my work, you'll learn to explore your architecture through several different lenses, not because one system holds all the answers, but because each reveals another facet of the same mystery. By this, my hope isn't simply that you'll know more, it's that you'll see differently, that you'll begin recognizing architecture everywhere, in yourself, in your relationships, in the work that you do, and in the people around you in your life. Because once you begin seeing it, it's very difficult to go back to seeing just personalities alone. And the uniqueness ends up becoming something you cherish.